How are you?
I'm really good. I'm really good. Um, a lot has happened since the last, since our first conversation.
Where are you right now? You're in.
Right now, I'm in Des Moines, Iowa, for the
Okay.
next couple months, and I'm just kind of preparing to move to Nashville, Tennessee.
What? How come the move?
While I've lived in Iowa, Iowa's technically been my home
Mhm.
for all my life, and there's a number of like really amazing reasons why I'm prompted to move right now. One being the experience and the excitement of being alone in a fresh new place,
Mhm.
where everything's new. Everywhere I go here now, presently, I've got hundreds of memories attached to pretty much every street corner,
Aw.
so which brings about a lot of familiarity and a lot of comfort, but with growth, and for those like for myself where I'm really seeking to grow and to expand, then being in situations where that creative part of my mind and the unfamiliarity um, is so important for breaking out of your current level and stepping into that next level.
Let's hop into your life and your experiences a little more.
Yeah, so well, I've grown up in Iowa my whole life,
Mhm.
and my mother was 15 years old when she had me. She's the daughter of a single mother household. Her dad had like abandoned her really young so she never seen her dad her whole life.
Mhm.
Like I think maybe she's seen him once. Um, they both her and my dad grew up in neighboring small towns,
Wow.
and my dad um, had an exceptionally abusive father, like exceptionally abusive father. And then at childhood, he had kind of had some really traumatic events happen to him too. Like he had accidentally shot and killed his best friend in a hunting accident. And then his best friend in high school died of leukemia. And then he was in a car accident where the driver like hit and killed an entire family in a car accident. And all this happened to him before the age of 18,
Wow.
while having this father that was like physically and verbally abusive. Like my grandfather was such a miserable man that when he died, I felt no emotions over him dying.
Mhm.
None. No sense of loss, no remorse over his passing, no longing to spend more time with him. In fact, if anything, it was a great relief. Like, oh, thank God. Like I don't ever got to hear this guy again. Like that's
Aw.
how miserable he was. That was what he gave the world. He gave the world misery and problem. And then in turn, all of his children, they're all fucked. All of my
Mm.
aunts, all of my uncles, all of them. Everybody is psychologically unstable to some degree, or emotionally unstable to some degree. Nearly all of their children, I would say, they're definitely not living pleasant, exuberant lives, and many of them are massively addicted to drugs or substances, or on their way to like just well, not so like enjoyable lives, you know.
Yeah.
And then so like growing up in this kind of environment, my parents, they didn't have like support for their young marriage. They got pregnant really young. My dad being 17, my mom being 15, and then them having me when my parents' birthdays are like really close together, and then them having me right after they both had turned to 18 and 16.
Wow.
So, an 18-year-old abuse victim and a 16-year-old, you know, I guess like abuse, neglect, and like um they just like they didn't have time to develop or heal themselves before they got thrust into the responsibility of parenthood.
Mm.
And so one of the things that I've discovered about humans is that where we're incapable of creating lasting pleasantness for ourselves, we will intuitively seek pleasure as a substitute for lasting pleasantness.
Hmm. Like the quick fix versus solving the root of the problem.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll like, and we do that through, activities. Like we try to distract
Mhm.
ourselves with activities like, oh, let's go play Frisbee, or, oh, let's go play basketball. Like we will distract a lot. A lot of folks will, and there is some, like with physical exercise, there's
Mhm.
some real benefit there. Right. But also we all know people that are using physical exercise as a perpetual mechanism of distracting themselves from doing the deeper work they need to do. And that can start really early. You know what I'm saying? That can start really early depending upon, the environment that a person grew up in. But um, we're not necessarily responsible for the situations that we're dealt, but we will be responsible for changing them.
Mhm.
We will be, like, at some stage in our life, we like, it'll be past. You won't
Mhm.
be able to sit back and say, you know you I'm a kid, or I didn't have this power, or whatever. Especially once we start to reach our adulthood, it really becomes our responsibility to take our lives into our own hands, and to
Mhm.
make better choices. And so my parents were doing the best that they knew how to do, but life was way harder in the 80s and early 90s. Like, look at us, we're on a podcast right now on a supercomputer.
Yeah.
They didn't have that stuff. So you think about how hard it was to get access to programs, to get access to education, to get anywhere, right? Like, it was just way harder. So the struggle of life and living was harder, and then, not to mention, now, like, as a young mother, like, the stress of raising this newborn baby, I know, was just over pressuring my
Mhm.
mom's heart to such a degree that, like, her needs for pleasantness started finding expression how most American people do. It's like they drink alcohol, right? Or
Mhm.
they smoke marijuana, right? They're doing something to solace their emotions versus confronting the root of the emotion, or taking action in such a way that they're going to resolve the internal emotion, because they've empowered themselves through a skill or through an ability.
Hmm.
And so she did that a little bit, and then wasn't doing the internal work on herself at a rate fast enough before the drugs and the alcohol and the drug usage was taking effect.
Mhm.
Like, the moment you start having a dependency on that, so now you can run to it, now you know it, and then once your body's taken in the substance too, now your body starts to crave it, no different than a cigarette, because the body has its own forms of communication back to the brain.
Hmm. So now it's your comfort.
So, and not only is it comfortable, but it's an easy pathway. It works to some degree for a moment, temporarily,
Hmm.
right?
And when you were younger, how did all of this affect your internal state? Like, what was your internal state growing up?
Well, internally, I was a very quiet kid. I've
Mhm.
always been very, you might say, well behaved. I could entertain myself. I would spend hours and hours alone in my own imagination, or I used to hand copy whole encyclopedias by hand. Like, I'd recopy the encyclopedia. So, I did a lot of things, but I was very, very, very perceptive. Like, I always knew when shit was fucked up around me.
Hmm. Even at a super young age.
Super young, early, young. Even, like, some of my earliest memories are, like, feeling the pain of my mother at the checkout counter of the grocery store, like,
Wow.
feeling her emotional pain. Like, I can remember, like, lifting my head up over the, like, the little conveyor belt
Yeah.
for your groceries. I
Yeah.
remember lifting my head up, like, looking down, and I could look up at her, and I could feel her, like, in a total fucking panic. Like, oh
Mhm.
my God, am I going to have enough money? Like, running through the math in her head. And then, like, a reactionary pattern of probably, a number of things, like shame and guilt. Like, here I am responsible for this, like, life. I'm not doing a great job as a parent, or whatever it was that she was
Mhm.
thinking. And I had this immediate longing to help her to not suffer.
Wow.
I just wanted her to not suffer. Like, is some of my earliest memories are of not wanting human beings to suffer,
Aw.
you know? And so, I think every child that grows up, if they really look at their childhood, like, even if you're like, because I grew up in like real poverty. Like, we've canned hunted for a box of macaroni and cheese, like it's, both of my parents are, you know, technically homeless right now, like, they're both still addicted to drugs, and we can go into that. But so there's been this cycle of poverty for a long time, generationally within my family. And those kind of environments, like, not everything about them all the time is bad,
Why do you say
you
that?
know.
That's an
Well, I mean,
interesting statement.
yeah, I mean, shit, like, dude, you get a lot of freedom.
Ah, I've
You
heard
get a
that.
lot of, you get a lot of freedom when you're a kid. You get a lot of freedom to go out. You get a lot of freedom to make mistakes and learn on your own. You know, um, and at the time, some of it seems exciting. You feel like an adult, bigger than what you are. You're like, oh shit, like, I'm around this person, and like, they're drinking a 40 and like smoking some shit, and like, I'm here with all the adults,
Mm.
and like, there's women around and skimpy clothes, and everybody's running and playing, and you kind of feel cool being out with the big people.
Hmm. Okay.
Like, sometimes it feels really fun. Sometimes you're like, oh yeah, and sometimes even the drama feels fun. Oh yeah, yeah, go fuck that dude up. Yeah, what's up? Okay, yeah, you gonna get him, like, and you get into it a little bit, and it becomes an interesting culture where you even start celebrating at times the struggle.
And why is that? Why do people celebrate the struggle?
Well, I think, again, from my experience, I guess I would say, I think because, like, we're all human beings really want is pleasantness.
Hmm. So
Like, we
you
really desperately want pleasantness. So at all times, every human being is just seeking how to create pleasantness for themselves.
so this would be the brain's way of, I guess, rationalizing the situation to make it pleasant to some degree, right? To make it a win.
Yeah, I think yeah, that would be a great description. It's them. It's
Mhm.
their way at that moment of attempting to make whatever situation that they're in pleasant. And
Mm.
sometimes it feeds the identity. It feeds whatever identities that they're holding. That could be a possibility too.
Right.
you know but these kinds of pleasures and pleasantnesses, they never last. They're not sustainable. They're only little, flash heaters in the pan. You feel them for a second, and then they're gone, and then they're usually replaced by some even worse misery.
Is that why you think, is that part of the reason why you think, I guess, the poverty cycle continues to go on, just because it's chasing these flashes of
Yeah, yeah,
pleasure?
well, that's part of it. I mean, it's a deeper thing. I feel like, some of it is like, our government does such a great job at fucking disempowering people and
Hmm.
making them believe a victim narrative, and then utilizing um, government institutions as weapons of disempowerment for people in poverty, while at the same time claiming to be your fucking friend.
Yeah, let's dive into that. Let's unpack that a little bit more.
It's funny. Yeah, because yeah, it's fucked from the floor up, because a lot, like, think about a lot of
Mhm.
people that go into government work want to be cogs in the machine, really. Like, it's not typically passion driven work,
Mhm.
and then a lot of times when you're in government work too, like, you're working with human beings a lot of times that are not putting a conscious effort into evolving themselves. Like, when you're in survival mode,
I see.
evolving yourself doesn't even fucking come into your brain.
Right, because
when
all you
when the survival mechanism is on, because the only thing you're thinking about is, how do I make it through this fucking day? How do I make it through this week? How do I get this rent money? How do I put food on the table? How do I get enough money to put into my gas tank to get from where I am right now to across town to my job. And then a lot of times these folks are, working jobs that, they're not passionate about. It's not setting their heart on fire. So they're not giving their best, right? So then they're not bringing something of value to an employer in a way that they can then receive a higher note. They don't know what their value is. They don't, and then a lot of times maybe some of them don't really have skills, they don't have skills to take care of themselves. And then we have government officials and bureaucrats that continuously force feed a narrative that you should just continue to be a fucking victim.
So go into that.
And I say that with passion because you have to stop. If you're in a victim mindset, you can never grow. You cannot grow when you're perpetually placing the blame for everything that is happening in your life off onto other people.
I'm with you on that.
You can't. And the thing is the only way, and whoever might hear this podcast that is in an poverty situation, because I've been in poverty. I mean, I know deep poverty, and I know the pain and the struggle of that. Like, for real, it ain't fake for me. It ain't like I was a middle class person and I'm trying to get clout. Like, I know what it is like to literally like walk ditches for cans, or dig through trash cans for cans, or go and try to like pick up furniture on the side of the road, and then go try to like hustle or sell it for a little bit of money here or whatever, or buying, like, saving up, scrapping money to scrounging money to buy a $250 car, having your car parked for fucking 4 weeks because you don't even have any money to put any gas in it, living in projects, living on people's couches. I know food stamps. I know social welfare. I grew up with a single mother, and most of the narratives that are being proposed to poor people are being spoken by people that don't know fucking poverty at all. They're upper class people with a need to feel virtuous.
Interesting. So what would be an example of like a narrative, or what would be an example?
Well, like, I think like narratives that tell people like, you can't do it and here's why. That's a problem. Anytime you hear that, you can't do it and here's why, wherever that's coming from, that person is a problem. And we can do anything that we put our focus and attention on. We put people on the moon. Now, I know there are people that are gonna be out there like, bro, the moon landing was fake, bro. Flat Earth, bro. I know somebody's gonna say that, but like, what in either case, we at least have satellites in orbit. Like, for those people out there, whatever you're thinking, you at least have an iPhone, and you don't even need to go to the moon to see. Just look at the pyramids, right? Look at some of the temples in India. These people lived in huts, for Christ's sake. And yet they woke up and built structures. Like, most people now can't even answer their email. Could you imagine if you put a ton of people that live like we live like kings? Like, back then, people didn't have the amenities that they have now. They lived in huts most of the time with like dirt packed floors. They would often have to bring their livestock into their home with them to keep the livestock from freezing or being eaten by like cow or by predator animals or whatever. And yet these people still went out and managed to create some of the most beautiful structures that human beings have ever seen, that have lasted for thousands of years.
Wow. Yeah, you're right.
So clearly, to me, something of the divine must have touched them. Something grand would have had, but these human beings lived much closer in alignment with actual nature. Like, we live in a cocoon of our own creation.
Like, let's step back. Hold up, before I ask a question about that, let me go back, so because I want to understand more.
Yeah.
I don't know, right? I'm learning through this. So what were things like, if you would go to the government or something, like the common thing was just you're always told you couldn't do it, Or
Well,
what,
I mean,
kind of dig more into the narrative that
well,
gets
and it's
pushed
not
by the
even
government.
just, well, if we'll look at our politicians.
Hmm.
You know, if you look at politicians at any stage in American history, there's typically one side trying to push you towards empowerment, one side trying to push you towards disempowerment, or
Hmm.
we should say, let's take it better. There are individuals that are attempting to push you towards empowerment, not sides, right? Because it doesn't matter the side.
Right.
Like there are individuals that are attempting to push you towards empowerment, and then there are individuals that are attempting to push you towards disempowerment.
Hmm.
Usually the ones that are attempting to push you towards disempowerment, they have value invested in you being disempowered. They don't want you to know. They don't want you to take care of yourself. They want you to have to suckle off of their power teat
So that they can maintain their power.
so that they can maintain their power.
Hmm.
Right? I mean, think about how much technical slave labor we have in the United States.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And the disproportionate, like the way, and so now the thing is, you start empowering people with an education. You tell people, hey, you know what? You don't have to be an employee. You could actually be an entrepreneur, and here's how. Right? And here's all the mechanisms and ways in which you could learn how to provide value and acquire customers and provide a product or a service and then retain that customer.
Do you think it's intentionally malicious, or do you think it's, maybe
Well, the education.
intentions that aren't fully thought through, intentions and incentives that aren't thought through? Or what do you think the root issue is? Do you think it's really like a
I
malicious
really think that
incentive?
we have to look at history a lot
Uh-huh.
if we want to understand where we are presently. And
Hmm.
we have to do our best to look at history objectively and think about, well, what were these people really after at the time period? And we have to do this with empathy and understanding as well for everybody.
Hmm.
Right? I think it's very important to look at history through empathetic eyes and understanding eyes. And one, so that we don't hate people of the past. I think that that's really important. I think hate is a disease, and it's very easy if you start playing a present moment victim to people of the past, right? And again, I'm not saying that the situation that we're in, it was our fault,
Hmm.
but it's our responsibility to correct it, isn't it? Like as a generation of people, isn't it our, like, regardless of what happened before us, it's our responsibility to do our best to create the world that we desire to live in, that we desire to be in, right?
Yeah, it's just taking, again, responsibility, ownership, right?
Boom.
Hmm.
And we can't do that if everybody's running around saying, I can't do that because it's XYZ's fault, or, you know, you
Hmm.
see what I'm saying? You can't take responsibility while you're displacing responsibility.
Right. And you're saying just the narrative that's being pushed out is allocating responsibility to other people, other
And
things,
it
or other
it's
situations.
it's disempowering you from being able to take action on the things that you can actually take action on that will radically improve the quality of your life immediately.
So what would you kind of propose? So like what would have helped, I guess, in your situation, or what should have been done, right? Like what in your hypothetical world, what should the government do? Maybe the government shouldn't be involved, or I guess what would be the narrative you'd push? Well, I guess I know the narrative, but how would you?
I think the less government, the better.
Yep, I'm
The
with you on
less
that.
the you know, the less the government is
Yeah.
trying to interfere with my life, the better.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that that is really, I do appreciate, like, I will not lie and say that, like, I don't think that there should be social programs. I do think that there should be I think as a society, especially an affluent society, there should be a sense of, but I think we should evolve as human beings to the point where, as human beings, we collectively desire to uplift the folks that are struggling in their life. Does
Mhm.
that make sense? Like, not necessarily through government mandate, but
The kindness of your
the
heart.
out of the abundance of one's own heart.
Yeah.
You know, imagine if you had 250 million out of the 300 some odd million Americans that really longed to not live in a state of competition, but live in a state of, like, well, it can be me and you.
Yeah. Well, I think that there are a lot of people, but I think similar to your or what you had mentioned is like a lot of the people that want to help maybe they have never really, I guess, empathized or taken the time to understand. So a lot of the ways that they're trying to help are actually hurtful. Like, for example, social program. Like, again, I agree with social programs as well. I just think that sometimes the incentives aren't great. So it's like, here's a good idea. Here's like someone trying to help or something, but I guess in the
Yeah.
end, it's hurtful,
I
right?
think that like so there's that old saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's part of what we're facing
Hmm.
is a lot of folks they're well intended, like their
Hmm.
hearts are in the right place. It's just the mechanisms that they're using to solve the problem are often not effective. And then when you attempt to, because it's of their own creation, they defend the mechanism as if they're defending their own life.
Hmm.
And so then they're ready to destroy you when maybe there needs to be a replacement of the mechanism. I also think that
Hmm.
there's a real problem with people that have made it from poverty, where they don't go back and tell other people in poverty how they did it.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
You know, that's a really big problem. Why isn't Jay-Z and Beyonce literally doing everything in their power to tell everybody in the neighborhoods that they grew up in how they were able to afford one of the most expensive cars on the planet?
Hmm.
Because it's more than just being able to sing and rap. It's a
Hmm.
lot more than that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or a
Yeah.
number of other folks, not even if it's just like the money and success that comes from celebrity, because there are so many ways in which individuals can earn a living. And I think when we're referencing poverty right now, like, we need to empower folks to be able to earn a sustainable living for themselves.
So what would you, if you went back to your neighborhood, or if you like, what would you say? How would you
Well, the
teach people?
first
What
thing,
would you do?
oh man, first thing I would be is like, y'all got to get clear and clean. First of all,
Hmm.
you got to stop fucking drinking. You got to stop smoking.
Hmm.
Because every fucking ounce of energy and time that you've invested into smoking and drinking is time that you could have been writing your goals, is time that you could have been reading a book, is time that you could have been listening to a podcast, is time that you could have been out networking or prospecting.
Hmm.
Right? So step one, don't get addicted, get clean and clear. So whatever it takes to get clean and clear. So then they need to know how to eat. Our food system is poisoning people.
Hmm.
And
True.
so most people's brains are broken because they've spent a lifetime being poisoned by processed and fast food.
Hmm.
But that's the power of marketing that we're not taught. And I don't think like the world or the community is genuinely taught like how business works. You know what I'm saying? But marketing is so powerful that every child on the planet can tell you that the human body seeks oxygen, and yet they can pump carbon dioxide into water, fill it with sugar, and then sell it to you as soda.
Hmm. True.
That's how powerful marketing is. And soda is killing this nation. Why are we having such a problem with COVID? Do you know?
Because people aren't that
Obesity.
healthy. Yeah.
People are
People.
overweight,
Yeah.
they're undermoved, they're malnourished, they're dehydrated, they're underrested, they're overstressed.
Hmm.
So their immune systems are completely compromised. Why were we marketing masks and vaccines, keeping alcohol and tobacco
Yeah.
stores open, and not marketing get outside and exercise, stop eating fast food,
Hmm.
get off of the pop, drink a gallon of water a day, eat fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables? Like, these are the things that we got to start with our communities, because we got to get people's brains and body right. If the brain is a little broken, because for now we can't even get into the function of like discovering awareness and
Hmm.
meditation, all that stuff can't even happen until these folks are physically healthy.
So is it, so people, like, the knowledge just really isn't there? Like, or
It is not there.
really?
The education industry,
Hmm.
dairy has bought and paid for so much of what we know about food pyramids and everything. And when, like, When are they teaching you about what a macronutrient is and putting an importance on it in such a way in your education period that you understand that you need to eat within a specific caloric framing every day?
Not my high school. Didn't learn that.
Not nobody's high school.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying? And people don't know about food. They don't know that if they go to McDonald's and get a cheeseburger, a fry, and a soda for $5.99, that they're probably consuming 3/4 of their daily caloric intake, if not all of their daily caloric intake, in that one single meal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but that's also the other problem is shitty food is a lot more cheaper. Like healthy food is expensive. To buy fruits and vegetables, I don't know, especially in Canada, like to buy a cucumber is like $1.50. Like one
Uh,
cucumber.
uh, 100%. And so then, like, but if you're disciplined, and this is the truth, like, we can't play the victim, right?
Mhm.
Because they're just making money. They're going to change the way they do business if we change the way we spend money.
Mhm. Right, because I mean, if we don't spend,
Because
yeah.
they'll change.
Mhm.
Their God is money. They're ruled by it.
Hmm.
Wherever the money goes, they'll go.
What's your opinion on a capitalistic system?
I'm into it. Capitalism has pulled more people out of poverty than any other system that's been created yet.
Mhm.
I mean, there would be no upward movement for a guy like me in a socialist situation or a communist situation. I would be so fucked. I'd be put into practically indentured servitude my entire life. Like, no, it's because of capitalism that I've been able to develop the skills and the abilities to pull myself out of poverty. Now, I'm not by any means in, like, let's say, like, the middle class yet. Um, you know, but what I am is I'm not in the I can't take care of myself from month to month class.
Hmm.
And I'm, like, working so passionately to continue to develop those skills because it is a skill. It's a skill.
Mhm.
And, like, once you have it, and if you're really willing to put in the work, just like getting fit, then anybody can make a living. Really, we can. In a capitalistic society, the possibility for all of us to earn a living is there. The possibility is there. Will we all execute it on it? Now that's our choice.
Hmm.
You
When
know what
did
I'm saying?
you, in your experiences, when did you, I guess, make that choice, or when did what kind of change for you, what switched for you, or you always had this mentality, or kind of take me through your
No, I
evolution?
mean, I'm really lucky in that, like, I got fired from a job, and like, when I was probably 20 years old, maybe, yeah,
Mhm.
20, maybe 21. I think I would have been 21, actually. I'm 35, so this was a little bit ago, but I was in a deep state of, like, suicidal depression because I didn't know some of these things that I knew now. I didn't I didn't realize that I was choosing my internal world.
Hmm.
I didn't realize that, like, yes, all these things were happening to me, but, like, I could choose to be different internally. Most of my suffering was there simply because I wanted my life to be different than how it was.
You desired something else. You weren't
Yeah,
blissful.
like, or I thought it should have been different. Like, I wanted my mom to not use drugs, but she used drugs.
Hmm.
So then I suffered. Does that make sense? I created suffering for myself.
I see.
You know what I'm saying? I wanted my dad to not have a brain injury, but he had a brain injury and couldn't father me, couldn't parent me as a dad. He had a car accident when I was 11 that nearly killed him, and it left him with a permanent brain injury.
Mhm.
And that was one of my first moments when I realized that personality was changeable, because who my dad was prior to the car accident was completely different than after the car accident. He came out a completely different person.
Wow. I mean,
So that this job that I had, like, I mean, I think it paid like $12 an hour. Um, at the time I was driving this truck, and it got, like, maybe like 15, 16 miles to the gallon. And so like, working 40 hours a week, I just like, I never had any money to ever like get my head above water, but I'd work like 40 hours a week, and the work was so like not in alignment with my own heart,
Mm-hmm.
that it was so difficult for me every day that I went. And I thought it was my only option for a long time. Like I was like, who's gonna, how do, I didn't think I had a way out.
Was
So
that
my
because,
perceptions,
wait, you didn't think you had a way out? Is that because of a self-esteem thing at the time, or was that because of just you don't know what you don't know, you didn't know there was other options, or it was like, I know there's other options out there, but I don't think that I have the abilities, or
it,
I
w-
don't think I'll be hired, or whatever it is?
it was a combination. It was a combination of a lack of skills and abilities that then fueled a low self-esteem,
Mm.
right? And no self, no esteem. We don't need any, so that, but I had a
Uh-huh.
very low self-image at the time, like in a lot of different ways. And that was built around memories of my experiences, and then the way in which I was interpreting those experiences as I was going through them, and a lot of them not even shaped by my home life, but a lot of them shaped by my educational experience,
Like what?
teachers.
Mm.
Well, like I moved a lot. So then like when you move a lot, you're not really in a steady state to like learn and grow and go through academics in a very linear fashion, how the system is set up,
I see.
and I actually think that I have some form of like rare genius that gets mistaken as a type of learning disability.
Okay.
Like you imagine, like if you were to have Elon Musk, he doesn't look like a normal dude.
Yeah, I don't know if you listen to Rogan podcast at all, but I don't know if you listen to the podcast with Musk and Rogan.
I haven't yet, but I
Yeah.
like both. I like both guys, Musk
Yeah.
and Rogan. I've seen clips, like clips
Yeah.
online, but I haven't gotten to sit through the full thing yet. But
Yeah.
I really like Elon.
Yeah,
I
me too.
get Elon in a big way. I really get a lot. I don't know him personally, so I only get what he presents, right? But like, we can't hide all parts of ourselves for those who have eyes to see.
Mm.
And there are really beautiful qualities in Elon, but I would imagine that like in some ways, you know, like I had a gift that was often mistaken as a learning disability. And so then I got put into like real special needs classes with kids that were like, below developmental learners. Maybe some of them had like, actual mental handicaps and such. And so that was discouraging. I was often separated from, the sort of like general population. And then I'd had a few experiences with some like physically and verbally abusive teachers when I was a kid, that like I was also a little of a rebellious. I was rebellious too at times. And it was like, if you weren't going to give me any attention or actually show that you cared about me learning the information, then I
Mm.
wasn't going to try for you. So
Interesting.
I went through high school, pretty much a DNF student until I went to an alternative high school. And like they sent me to a high school for like basically bad kids, kids that get in fights and don't do their schoolwork and stuff like that, and I was on like, the government food programs that they do for high schools, how you always get like the little lunch punch card and stuff, and so that made me an object for bullying against kids that had like more money. And I wasn't standing for that shit when I was a kid, and I was ready to scrap with anybody that wanted to try to hurt me emotionally or physically, or,
Mm.
so like I was kind of ready to go. And then once I went to that school and I started getting like actual empathy and understanding from my teachers, I went from being a DNF student to a straight A student.
Wow.
Like literally like that, DNF to straight A's.
And
And I ended,
the only thing that really changed between those two was the perception teachers had of you, or the way that the teachers treated
yeah,
you.
and the relationship that I held with the teachers,
Mm. Wow.
like the people that were offering the guidance. And so then, I graduated early. I was offered a scholarship and stuff, but I went on to join the Marines at 17. That's a long story. We won't go super deep there, but I joined the Marines at 17. Um, and then, but like a culmination of my life experience was like hitting a real like pivotal fork in the road in my early 20s, in which, certain experiences was really, really leading me, and my inability to know how to manage them, to know how to like view them and interpret them, because I didn't know anything about my own system at the time. Like, keep in mind, before I went on this own journey of self-discovery, I was just living life and reacting to it. And I was doing my best to learn about how to live based upon the best examples that I could be attracted to. So that might be like Will Smith. Like, he was a huge inspiration for me as a kid. Love that guy. I was super inspired by him, but then I was also deeply inspired by guys like 50 Cent, guys that had that gritty, grimy, don't even think about, fucking with me without some shit gonna
Mhm.
happen, because I needed that to survive some of the situations that I was exposed to growing up, in the elements that I grew up in. Like, it is a survival skill.
What, like, would you be comfortable sharing some of those experiences?
Like, what, like growing up, I mean,
Mhm.
most of it just involves like how to obtain power around other men, like in like positions of like respect, how to give respect, how to gain respect, how to fight if need be, how to command presence, and like it's a completely different code of ethics at that level than as you start moving. It, some of the same strategies are being applied at higher and higher levels. They're just much more subtle, much more conniving, and not so in your face.
Hmm.
But a lot of the same, like grimy, gritty, strategies are being applied at like different levels, and I think, and it has to do, in my experience, it has to do with how evolved that human being is within themselves,
Hmm.
you know. So fighting was a really, really big thing for me, and it became a passion. Like, I actually, like, I had to fight so that like I wouldn't, I mean, because there's always a bigger, badder dude than you in the hood. You know what I'm saying? But usually what makes you, um, like, you either, then you can either very easily become prey all the time, and then you hide. Like, people that like don't know how to like stick up for themselves, or whatever, they become like easy targets, easy victims, and then they just kind of like hide, or shy away, or shelter away. And then some people, like, they start to, you push back against the grain. You try
Mhm.
to command some type of presence, and then hopefully, hopefully you don't start selling drugs or doing anything stupid, or doing drugs yourself before you've got time to actually get out and make some real skills. But we're all listening to fucking rap music. We all want, we all want the cars and the clothes and the bitches and the good times and the popping bottles and the clubs, and we want like motherfuckers to fear us, because it's all survival mindset, like it's all power, and like survival power, and procreation.
So that's why, like, you would pick on the prey. Like, what's in the mindset of the big, like the head honcho in the hood going after the prey? Because it's respect. It's because they want power. It's because why?
They want power. And so like an altruism, in a lot of ways, like, uh doesn't always happen in the hood. Like, things are not altruistic deals. A lot of deals are like sneaky, cutthroat, say something to your face, do something later,
Hmm.
you know. So usually that life catches up to people, but it's glorified.
Hmm.
It's glorified to do drugs, it's glorified to rob, it's glorified to, like, in some ways the street life is glorified in our art right now, presently, especially our music.
Hmm.
But there's nothing glorious about the street life. If the street life was actually fucking glorious, why is everybody so desperate to get out of it?
Hmm.
And then why in the fuck are these millionaires continuing to rap about shit that they don't even live anymore? It's real funny that you go back to the hood and fucking play around, a little bit on the weekends, and then go back home to your gated community with your guards at the door.
If if there was like rappers that make it out of the hood, why would you, I guess it's because that's how they got it to be a millionaire. Like, why would they continue
It's
perpetuating the same, I guess,
there's
messaging that
there's
keeps people down a bit?
well, one, they've figured out how to make money off of it, and they
Right.
probably haven't figured out how to pivot and make money in a different way.
Got it.
Right. So they're still trying
Mhm.
to keep their revenue streams going. Right. That's a big part of it. Right. Like, and maybe at the time when they're first initially rapping, they're rapping authentically and truthfully about where their present moment experience is.
Mhm.
But then when they get older, they don't pivot, they don't transition into
Mhm.
something different. But they got to keep selling. They got to keep rapping about what sells, because that's how they make their money.
Are there any rappers that you respect that you have seen pivoted?
Oh yeah, 50 Cent, dude. I love 50.
Mhm.
I love 50. I think every kid that grows up in poverty should explore 50 Cent's life.
Mhm.
I mean, I really think that, like, whether you agree with everything about him or not, he is a fascinating human being, and what he's been able to accomplish is a textbook. Like, I mean, there is so much there about humility and ability to pivot and self-awareness. Like, most people don't know that dude don't even drink. He don't drink, he don't smoke, he don't nothing, because he wanted to be clear. He was just like me. I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I don't do nothing. Because he understood something too. Like, I understand, you ain't getting out of that life unless you are always 100% on top of your game. It is a hard push to get out of that world. And not only did that dude get out of that world, but he became one of the most popular musical artists of all time, and has pivoted into movies, and has pivoted into television series and stars. He's produced other rappers. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
his books are really neat, and if you read them in chronological order, it's kind of fun to see him go through his evolution as a human being. So I like 50 Cent. I like 50 a lot. I
I'm
mean,
a little.
I should say in that, like, I respect him. I
Mhm.
respect what he's done, because I know what he's had to go through. That motherfucker got shot 9 times.
Oh, it's crazy.
And like, a lot of people don't even know what it is like to have somebody genuinely want to kill you. Like we got a lot of people talking about trauma because their parents didn't pay them enough attention and didn't come to their, sweet 16. You know what
It's
I'm saying?
yeah, it's so interesting, and this is why I'm so thankful, like, for you, and some other people I've had conversations with to share their experiences, because like in my world, it's like it's like you see movies, right? And you'll see like they'll show people's lives in movies, but you don't really get a sense of it. Oh, it's actually real. Like, you know what I'm saying? And so it's
Yeah.
crazy. Like, this is someone's reality, right? My reality was so different, so different, right? And so it's almost unfathomable thinking like
That's how I
that's how
feel
someone
about
lived.
rich people.
Hmm.
Like my present condition, like, I'm actively looking to expose myself to wealth at the highest degrees, because I can't paint any neural network patterns as to what that looks like. Like, really, what it feels like, what the day-to-day life, like, how do they live? Like, what do they really feel? How do they respond to this?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, how do they actually keep and maintain this? Not just like tactically, but there has to be a psychological and an emotional component that is involved. How do they experience having that much? Like, what does having that much money, how does that influence their interiority? What is the next stage of evolution? Like,
Well, I mean,
it's
from my observations, and not saying like, but I guess from being like, my family was decently well off, not like hugely rich, but never had to worry about food or anything like that. But and I went to a private school, so surrounded by people maybe the same. But it's like, for me, a lot of what I see is maybe the next evolution is people just seem like they have a void, like they're just searching for something. They're when you're rich, you're seeking pleasure, and maybe it's the exact same thing as poor. It's just like the pleasure looks something different. But at the end of the day, I don't see a whole lot of people happy. I don't see a whole lot of people blissful with money. It's just
yeah.
a different version of seeking to fill the void or the pleasure or whatever.
Yeah, and that's 100% been my experience as well, because again, that lasting pleasantness can only be found in here. Nothing out here can actually create the lasting pleasantness. The lasting pleasantness comes here, which is why most of the people I end up working with are wealthy individuals that are secretly struggling, and it's not their fault.
Hmm.
You know, like they were taught that, like, and we all are. Like, I'm pursuing like financial freedom for myself as like um, as a challenge to putting into like a generational condition. In addition,
Hmm.
like I want to be able to utilize those skills to empower other people after me with the tools that have helped me internally.
I see. It's
You
quite
know,
a
and like,
admirable goal.
yeah, and
Mhm.
money is the only way that I'm actually going to be able to like really accomplish that on any like real level. Because again, if I have investors, I have to answer to investors.
Mhm.
You know, if I'm raising money, I'm answering to donors. Like, I just want to like provide an amazing product, value, or service to somebody, maybe through developing a software, maybe through you know, learning how to like, you know, I'm just exploring all sorts of different ways of like action, because there's so many infinite ways for us to make money, you know. And like, so I want to do that, because then I want to use the profits from that experience to actually, like, I've got a whole cool mission. Like, I totally plan on pulling up to like hoods all over the country in a supercar and like giving away books, giving
Mhm.
away, you know, books on, say, stoicism, books on meditation, books on how to set your goals, books on how to transform your internal world, books on how to become an entrepreneur starting from zero, you know, books.
Okay, Maxwell.
That's right, Dane Maxwell, right?
Yeah.
Right, because those things are so needed. And the world right now wants heart-based products and services.
Mhm.
There is a longing for heart-based products and services that is taking place.
Mhm. If you put books, so right now there's no access. Like, I guess the question is, right? The internet's. I mean, my assumption is, right, the internet's freely available.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
people have
but they don't.
access.
They're Yeah, they need sold.
Mhm.
All right, so like, right now, what's capturing young people's attention is rap videos and OnlyFans.
Yeah. Uh, How would you?
Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I
Okay.
hear you. Mhm.
How'd I what?
How would you, I guess, point people to the right direction, or what would you do, right? Because.
You gotta be it.
Mhm.
You gotta be it. You gotta live it, for sure. Like, for real, you gotta be a person that they want to be like.
Mhm.
That's how you get to them. You got to be the person that they want to be like. They got to want to You got to make yourself in such a way that they want to be around you. They want what you got. If there's not a sincere longing for them to want what you got, then they won't do what it takes. So then I think that like a person like me has a real strong advantage in that, like, I think I can really blend and walk in both worlds really well, between the mystical and the material.
Mhm.
Like, I don't got any problem getting fancy, hopping in a supercar, and then going and, you know, spending like 3 weeks in a mud hut.
Mhm.
And, you know, like, I'm fine in both worlds.
Mhm.
You know, I've grown up in poverty my whole life. I know that we come into this world with nothing and we leave with nothing.
Mhm.
But I want to use whatever tool that is available to me to help create lasting pleasantness and an increase in awareness and consciousness for future generations, and for my community now, for the people that are here now, not just the people that are going to come later. I want to do something for them too, but I want other folks to be able to enjoy the fact that they could create a more pleasant experience for themselves now, internally and externally. Because we're not going to get around people's desires to want, you know, a little bit more comfort and convenience externally.
Mm-hmm.
like totally.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like the strategy that I'm seeing that could work potentially, this is what I'm attempting to see. Maybe it fails. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the only solution is just to make peace with it completely internally. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but I think if I'm looking at people like customers, like all people like customers, and like trying to go, okay, well, how do I solve a pain for them? I have to market to them where they are. I have to meet them where they are. I have to find a way to communicate with them where they're at presently,
Right.
and then inspire them, and hopefully, you know, the intention would be that through that messaging, a certain percentage of those folks will want to, they'll have a sincere longing and desire to take that inward journey.
I feel like you have such an amazing opportunity because you can understand, right? And I mean, step one, right? Empathize with your customer. So it's kind of like a superpower that you have, right? Something that's really, really cool and really, really inspirational. I think you're a very inspirational person.
Oh, well, I think you're a very inspirational person. And for the record too, like, I don't think that anybody, like where we're all born, I think we're all, you know, like nobody should ever feel ashamed or guilty for whatever situation that they happen to be born into. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can't control that. So like, if you were born affluent, for anybody who reads this, like, good for you, you know, and good for your parents for being, you know, being in a position where like they could provide that for you. I would just say, like, if you want to help you, search for something deeper within yourself. Like, especially if your financial needs are taken care of, right? And you don't actually have to like go out and, you know, earn more money, spend some time exploring life. Like, figure out what this whole thing is. Like, when was the last time you looked at a tree and really sat down and was like, dude, what is this? You know, like, what is this for real? And go to other places, like, make yourself uncomfortable by getting into other cultures so that you develop new neural networks, you develop new patterns, because you'll have to. It will help soften a person's personal likes and dislikes, which helps actually form, like and dislike really helps form the ego's like perceived solidity. But you go to a new place, there's none of your favorite foods there, maybe.
Right. Right.
So now you got to compromise. Now you got to go, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll have how do you pronounce that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no,
You know,
exactly.
and then you don't speak the language. And so then hopefully then out of that, a natural sense of reverence and humility will descend upon you.
Yeah. And a
Where
questioning, right? You're just questioning
you're just questioning.
these beliefs that I've held. It's even interesting, like even within like where I've been in Miami, it's like depending on the groups that you're involved in, right? You have the hippies, you have the ambitious finance kids, you have the entrepreneurs, you have like the sportsters, you have the partiers, and everyone has like a different subset or culture. And it's like it's interesting because when you are there and you're surrounded by it, you see the world and what their I guess what their goals are, what their ambitions, and it's a culture of it, right? And so it's cool being in different worlds because then you can kind of question, oh, what do I actually want, versus kind of just going along with what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, see, that's so cool, because like I've not had very many of those experiences. Thank you for sharing that. That was super awesome. I wouldn't know that was what it was like in Miami. You know, I wouldn't have
Miami's
known.
cool. Miami's cool. So I mean, I was born in Winnipeg. Well, in Niverville. Niverville is a town with 3,500 people, 4,000 people. And
No
so
wonder you're so nice.
thank you. Thank you.
You're
Yeah.
Canada nice.
And I mean, like, so yeah, like I grew up, I mean, pretty easy life. Went to a private school, and private Christian school. And so you're just sheltered from a lot, right? And you know you're sheltered, 100% you know you're sheltered. But and you think there's a different world out there, but you don't really know until you've like talked to someone or had an experience of it. So like a lot of things in the world, it's just like it's like a movie, like, oh, I don't do people actually live like that? No, it's like Hollywood or something. But when you come
Mm-hmm.
down to Miami, it's cool because Miami, you have people from everywhere. Like you have, first of all, it's mostly Latin. So mostly from Cuba, a lot of Venezuelans, a lot of Colombians, and then people from the Caribbean, people from all over, people from Asia, people from Europe. Um, and it's cool. And I guess that's what was cool about university. If you push yourself to go interact with different groups of people, because what a lot of people do is like they find their tribe, they get comfortable in it, which is awesome, right? Because you're finding the people, you're finding, I guess, what you want out of your life. But at the same time, at some point, you just kind of start going with where that tribe's going. So like the finance kids, like their mentality is so different than the entrepreneurial kids. So different. So it's cool always questioning, like, is this actually, like, when you think you have it all figured out, you'll meet someone and talk to someone from a completely different, like, for example, I'll talk to you or something, or I'll talk to another person, and just completely shatters the perception of the world that you thought that you had.
Yes. And so like those experiences, I think, are exceptionally priceless and should be consciously crafted, like all of us human beings. And so that what you just said is part of what's really prompting me to move to Nashville. So like I'm wanting to go and just be in that completely new, uncomfortable place. And like, again, then too, like if you keep reminding yourself that your internal experience is 100% your own making, if you go into a new group and you find yourself becoming uncomfortable, it's a great opportunity to explore why. Why am I uncomfortable?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what the reasons could be, but what is it within me that is making that where I'm experiencing uncomfort now that I'm in this new situation? And that's hard. And we can do this in a number of ways, like dancing. You know how many people, the moment you even say dance, they go, oh,
Yeah,
like
especially gringos. Especially gringos. Yeah.
But and think about all of the beauty and the dimensions of life that are being lost and missing simply because you won't allow yourself to explore dance. And for those folks who have explored dance, especially dance that is not that, and when I say dance, I don't just necessarily mean like formatted dance that looks like Chris Brown, or dance that looks like a ballet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm just talking about dancing as a mechanism of allowing yourself to unconstipate the life that is within you, to not hold back, to let it come out, and to let it be expressed through the body and in this exuberant format without tightening it back down with the butthole of fear, just tightening it down.
These metaphors are really descriptive. I'm liking them.
And because this is something that I discovered. I first discovered it within me, and then I looked at humans to see if this was like a universal quality. And the thing is there's so much about us that we think is just unique to us that is universal. And then because we don't ever discover what is universal, we miss out on the beauty, on the fact that there is not one of us that is identical. We're all a completely unique happening at the same time. So there's no need to even compare, because there's nothing that we can compare to, because we're all just so uniquely individual.
Right.
And the problem, that ends up arising with comparison is the seed of jealousy. And jealousy's a bitch. Jealousy hurts. Jealousy is a really painful experience.
Well, that was one. Oh, go for it.
Yeah, or jealousy or envy. Anytime where you feel that somebody has, that you are deprived of something that somebody else has. And there's this quality that happens when a human being is having a genuine experience of appreciation and gratitude, that from my experience, and I'm just going to say, rather than saying God, I'm going to say source of creation. Like that feeling of appreciation and gratitude moves you instantaneously closer to the source of creation.
Yeah, I would say with my experiences, I agree with that. And it's interesting. So I had spent 5 weeks in Guatemala. 3 weeks was in like a smaller town, like on a lake. And the Guatemalans, they're like, obviously they don't have a lot. I remember I was talking to I had like a Spanish teacher. She was helping me teach Spanish. I told her, I was like, oh yeah, I'm like gonna go on a flight. And then she was telling me that she wanted to go see her, um, to go to a wedding, right? But she had never gone on an airplane and like they didn't know if they could afford it. And later on in the conversation, she said, like, really in this life here, you just have to be super grateful and super thankful. She's like, because if not, you just get frustrated and that puts you behind. And it's like the people there are happy, like they're way happier than the people here in America. People in America are miserable, right? But you go there and like don't have a lot, but no problem. Life is good. This
Yeah.
this life is awesome. And no one in Guatemala, like none of them want to come to America. They're like, no, like life here is great. Why would I want to leave? Like I can get what I want. It's beautiful here. I can relax. Like, so it's just grateful and thankful, you know?
Yeah, that's amazing. You know,
Yeah.
and like as I hear it kind of intuitively, one of the things that's easy that easily happens when we have affluence is it's easy to hide in pleasure.
Mhm.
It's easy to distract in pleasure, especially if you've got money. Like, oh my God, you can get a new toy, a new experience, a new something, and you can just keep cocooning yourself in pleasure and never really like facing reality. And then what happens is when real reality really hits, it's devastating.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I would agree.
and you know, but for like that lady, so much of her life is probably like exceptionally difficult
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
comparison, you know, and she's probably had to learn, like, because here's the deal. Does a human being, because let's look at it like this. Does a human being operate at their best when they're blissful or when they're miserable?
Blissful, for sure,
So
blissful.
she just told you that she learned how to, like, life is not teaching us what to do. Life is teaching us how to be.
Hmm. Yeah. But I think,
So she learned through
uh-huh.
those experiences, like frustration. What did she say? She said it set her back.
Yeah.
It made her worse.
Hmm.
So she's choosing gratitude as a mechanism to experience her life because she's learned that gratitude is a much more effective mechanism than frustration. But where is the onus of her internal experience being placed in that moment, externally or internally?
Internally.
Because we can choose our experience,
Hmm.
we can't necessarily choose our situation.
I agree with you 100%.
You know, and
100%.
so by confronting what we call our ego, which is really just identification with the body and the mind. It's we what I mean by that is like we believe ourselves to be the body, and for good reason. It's not our fault. It's a powerful illusion. Youth is a powerful illusion.
Youth, you said.
Yeah, youth for most people, you know. I was really fortunate in that, like, I had just sort of exceeded a level of misery, and grace also stepped in and drove me to something deeper than my body.
Yeah, let's go back to that experience. So you were 21. Um, you had kind of just lost your job or been fired or whatever the situation.
Yeah, I got fired, but I was actively trying to get fired.
Okay.
You know, when you don't want to go somewhere, and like I was perpetually late. Good job when I got there, but like I was continuously attempting to push the boundaries to see how much, because like I did at the time, I didn't have the courage to quit.
I see. So you're just trying to kind of sabotage so that you get fired.
Yep, yep.
Nice.
And then once I got fired, then I forced the movement. I was sort of like perpetually burning my boat. You know, like I knew I needed to change, but at the time, I didn't have the strength or where I can't pronounce that word.
Wherewithal.
Wherewithal. There you go. Yes,
Mhm.
thank you for helping me. Um, I didn't have the strength or the wherewithal to um, do that internal work and confront how I really felt.
Huh. Did you know at that point, did you know that you needed to do internal work, or
No,
it's you stumbled
uh,
across this by chance kind of thing, by luck, or the planned universe, whatever you want to call it?
I guess I didn't. Let me really like think about, because I got to think about the time frame. There was a time where I didn't think I needed to do any internal work at all. I just thought that I was a good person and the world was full of shit people. And if the world could just get on board with not being so shitty, then my life would be fine. Like, I remember that mindset, maybe like, and really that mindset was just the byproduct of my own personal experiences of the people around me. Like, it's hard to not think that when like your next door neighbor is like a serious meth dealer.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like out on parole from an attempted murder charge that was dropped to willful injury on a plea deal.
Yeah.
Like, like, this is who I'm going over and like barbecuing chicken and boxed macaroni and cheese with, and he's teaching me about the differences between pink dope and blue dope.
Yeah, your
You know,
experiences growing up were a lot different than mine.
showing me how to like weigh out a bag of drugs, what how much this drug goes for, how much these pills go for, what to do when somebody, how to hide from the cops, how to like, there's an education to street life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes
So
sense.
And then, but I always wanted out of that shit. Like, I didn't want to be in it. That's why, like, I didn't have anything else to hang out with, but so I would be around these things when I had to be, but like, I never wanted to be there. So I would often turn to, like, again, like I said, figures like Will Smith or other people that were doing great things, and use them as a source of inspiration, use music as a mechanism to imagine or envision like a different future for myself. I knew I needed to be like really disciplined. I never wanted to be out of control, because essentially, like, my parents were partiers where the party never turned off.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of kids do this now. Like, a lot of kids are really into partying and they have no fucking idea what train tracks they've just hopped on. They don't. So anyway, you want me to go into the depression stuff probably.
But quick before you do,
Yeah.
was there any kind of thing that happened in your life, or you just from a young age you just knew this wasn't the life? I guess my question is, where did you learn that this wasn't the life that you wanted, right? Whereas maybe some of your peers were trying to go for this life.
So much awful shit from substance usage before I was probably even 5 years old, that like my consciousness was like, dude, this is fucked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I saw my first pornographic film laying on the floor of my aunt's drug house, I think probably at like 4 or 5 years old. And everybody would go upstairs and smoke their dope in this upstairs attic. And I'd like fallen asleep on this floor, and I think they all came down, and I just think they didn't know any better or whatever. They thought it'd be funny, and they started playing this porno that, like, I don't know if they just thought it was funny and they were trying to like laugh about it with each other, but it was a whole group of them. And I remember them laughing. And I mean, probably like 9 or 10 men and women in the room, dirty house, unvacuumed floors, like food on the floor and stuff. So I'm asleep on the floor in this kind of like dirty blanket, probably hasn't been washed in like a couple of weeks. Like, it's a fucking dirt house. It's a dirty drug house. Mm-hmm. I'm asleep on the floor. And they played this porno that was like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And this was how I started to see how like our early childhood like impacts us, because this did, and this might be TMI for this podcast, but it later affected like even how I experience things sexually. Like, I'm super into blowjobs
because of this porno that you saw when you're younger.
And I if I really examine it, I think it's because this porno, like this like guy was like chasing Snow White around, and like, and then like Snow White, like he like turns around and he pulls out like this giant penis. It's like big penis. And she's like, oh my God, it's amazing. Like her whole demeanor switched from like, why are you chasing me? Why are you chasing me? To like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. you know, and,
That's
and
crazy that your memory of it. How old were you? You said?
I was probably
Yeah.
4 or 5 years old. I mean, I was really young, and it fascinated me.
Mhm. Sorry, I had a
Like,
quick question on that before. Do you have a lot of memories from your childhood? Because that's something that I noticed with my Cuban friends. They're telling me about their childhood in Cuba, which is nuts, crazy. And they have memories from when they were like 2 years old, 1 years old. For me, I only start having memories when I'm, I don't know, maybe 9 years old, like 8 years old, maybe 10. So it's fascinating that you have this bad memory is so vivid or so strong for you.
yeah, I mean, some memories are more strong than other. Like, I know that I could access. I feel pretty confident that if I did enough focused work, I could access probably just about any memory. Like, it would
Mm-hmm.
just take me time,
Uh-huh.
focus, attention, and then like probably some manipulation of my body and utilizing my body and breathing in order to access those deeper recesses of those memory banks. Because you got to think, like, that data comes in and it gets shuttled from the short-term memory bank into the long-term memory bank, so you got to go like searching through those files,
I see.
but some memories, I think, like, also help shape our likes and dislikes and desires as we start like getting older and growing older. And I just think that this was one of those like standout memories for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, later on, I've done this deep work around every aspect of my life, around like eating food and sleeping, around like sex and sexual desire, around taking action in the world, like the things that I want to do, around compassion, around creativity, around how do I like, because you notice that like musical people or artists, like, they live completely different than people that are like, maybe say, like a finance guy. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, the mentality is 100% different.
100%.
Yeah.
So then you start to wonder, well, what is it, like, what experiences started to help shape and craft this being into who they became today,
Mm-hmm.
you know
Mm-hmm.
and so that's like the thing that really fascinates me, is the unfolding of the human system, and how the soul is experiencing the human system in relation to this whole grand life process. That's my deepest fascination.
Interesting. Interesting. That's kind of part of the reason why I do this podcast. Is exactly that. It's like understanding people, their experiences, and how it shaped them. And then trying to understand like why they do the things that they do. Well, it's just their experiences they've had that causes the behaviors that they're doing, you know? So that's fascinating to me.
Well, and I think that the podcast venue, I think it's so cool that you have that, because it is a great way for us to explore that in other folks.
Mhm.
I like doing it like this. I love especially going to a place where I'm not known in any way, because you can blend in really easy when you're not known.
Mhm.
And if you can get to a place where you can blend in and then just watch humans. People always say people watching, but watch without making conclusions.
Hmm.
Just like watch to watch, develop that skill first. Then what happens is as you develop the ability to like listen with your senses versus talk with your senses, then all of a sudden life starts to speak to you in a completely different way. At least this was my experience.
Interesting.
And so that's a cool way. But the podcast is such I mean, like, and like, think about this, like, if it wasn't for this, Katie, like, how might you and I have ever come together and had this conversation?
Yeah. Probably wouldn't have happened.
But yeah, so like you had this podcast. I just think it's so neat because it opened up this opportunity
Mhm.
for us to get to know each other, and for you to, well, at least in this context, we're really just diving into what I got going on. But I definitely can feel your energy, and we've had great conversations off of here too. So
Mhm.
there's so much like that I want to know about you too.
We'll say that for another time. Maybe another time. But I want to know more. Let's go. So the experiences you had when you were younger, and then you got to this point when you were 20. Let's dive back into that experience.
Yeah, so I kind of had like, almost like that one encounter that I told you at 4. Then like there are like several of these big events, that have happened like pretty consistently. Like I used to watch my grandfather like physically beat the shit out of my grandmother like a man on like multiple occasions, you know. My uncle, he went to prison. He went to Fort Leavenworth, joined gangs. So like, those impacted how he behaved, and so like we never really had like normal, emotionally balanced, loving family experiences. Like any sort of like group gathering was usually like paired with like some form of infighting or guilting or shaming or bullying. Like very, very very few experiences were like that I can say were like just like 100% pleasant.
Hmm.
you know the struggles of poverty are like super real, and again, like where there's no lasting joy, people seek pleasures to substitute, and then eventually the body grows dependent upon these substances. Like both my dad and my mom are dependent upon methamphetamines. Like they
Just to
need it.
escape.
Well, they need it to feel normal, not even to escape. Like in the same way that like like a coffee drinker wakes up and drinks coffee, like they're waking up and probably like taking a hit or smoking or whatever it is that they're doing to feel like they can get going for the day. And this is what happens when partying becomes such a regular and routine part of your life that like pretty soon like you don't even remember what it was like to not be in the party.
Yeah, it's like you start developing a habit and you just get into that same habit over and over and over again.
They have a psychological dependency and they have a physical dependency. So they're not free. They're slaves to a substance.
And,
but they're still beautiful people. Like I say that at the same time, I want to acknowledge their beauty and like, and I think people do too much to villainize people that suffer from drug addiction. Like honestly, like most people that get into drug, they don't want to be there. They do not want to be there. In fact, in most instances, like they're like, this is like, they desperately want to stop. They know they're letting everybody down, including themselves. They know they're putting themselves into awful situations, but like they literally can't kick the physical dependence. Like it's like, you ever see somebody try to quit smoking cigarettes?
Yeah.
Like the body develops a chemical dependency. And if it does this with nicotine, this is kind of the deeper part that I'd like to leave you with right now. It does it with anger. It does it with depression. It also does it with the joy chemicals. It's just, which ones are you causing to be activated in your body most frequently? Like this is why, like, so to give you an example of this, like I know somebody that every day when they get off of work, they got to get off work around rush hour, right? So they get on the interstate, it's rush hour. So what happens? Oh, man, fuck this guy. He doesn't know how to fucking drive, blah. You know what? Oh, you idiot. Like, and they're in their car and they're literally having a verbal fight with like 20, 30 cars their whole way home.
And they just like that.
And they do it every day. And part of the reason why they're doing it every day is because they've trained their body to anticipate that chemical at that time. So then when the body gets on the interstate, it's like, okay, it's 4 o'clock. We should be getting our little hit of anger. Where's our hit of anger? So then the brain starts sending, the body starts sending signals to the brain to search for something to get pissed at, because it's searching for it, the thing that's going to give it its hit of frustration. Like if you think of like a hit of a drag of a cigarette, like why do people who smoke go, oh my God, like after sex, they go, oh my God, I need a cigarette. Or they eat a meal and they're like, oh my God, I need a cigarette.
Yeah.
Because they've trained the body to anticipate that chemical after that action.
Have you read The Power of Habits by Charles Duhigg?
I haven't. I'll put it on my list though.
Pretty much what you're explaining is exactly what the book is. It, like for me, it was one of my favorite books because it changed the paradigm. because it explains exactly that. It's like our whole life is a series of habits. So whatever you do, you want to do more of. And as you do more of it, it's harder to break out of it. And everything, right? Everything you do, that's how the most successful marketing campaigners are successful, because they turn into a habit, right? And it's how you can break your habit. So it's cool. It was one of the best books. That was really good. And then there's this other book called Atomic Habits, which
Hmm.
was more tactical ways of breaking down habits. So that's something I find super fascinating, because it's like the little stuff you do every day you don't think matters, but like you just keep playing that out and out and out and out. Eventually you have something that's so hard to break, you know? So it's like you have to be super conscious about the little stuff that you're doing every single day.
Oh man, you nailed. I'm gonna check out both of those books. Thank you for sharing those with me. Uh, I'm just like sharing with you my lived experiences in
Yeah.
here. Like seeing what goes on in my system. And like having a longing to then break those shackles. Like that's my longing. My longing is to break my own internal shackles.
Do you still think that you have some shackles?
Oh
Like,
yeah, oh yeah, of course. Yes, like this work is, you know, um, this work takes commitment. It does. It takes commitment, and it takes dedication, and above all, it takes consistency of action. Even like I do practice as a minimum of twice a day, and that's why I want to go to Nashville.
hmm,
You
how come?
know,
Oh, to
well,
break, to get out of your comfort zone, to
I
break
want
it.
to I want to break shackles. I want to break shackles.
Just curious, why Nashville? Out of curiosity.
So Nashville's kind of a bigger city. It's sort of anticipated to be one of the fastest growing cities in the country. When you go to Nashville, it would be considered a red state too. Like I don't want to move to a Democratic state right now. Yeah, I just don't like. I'm not in alignment with any policies that are pretty much being
Mhm.
pushed by Democratic leadership right now. I'm not in alignment with any of the narratives that are being pushed by the Democratic upper leadership right now. And I want to spend some time with some folks that I'm much more in alignment with. Like I'm very like I'm pro Second Amendment. I'm big on right to bear arms. I know what it is like. Like taking guns away from people is not going to stop bad people from having guns.
Mm.
And the guns are there not for hunting. They're there to make a tyrannical government afraid of its people.
Mm.
I mean, human beings have not evolved themselves to the point where they desire altruism from their hearts, so they only respect fear. Like, if you really think about it, most people, like a lot of folks, the only reason why they don't act like an animal a little bit more is because they're afraid of consequence.
Mhm. Well, there's a big theory of thought out there that's like that was why religions, or I guess the rules around religions, were ultimately created, because back in the day when it was created, it was the way to control people, because there was no other way to control them. So therefore, be a good person or you'll burn in hell, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So, like, think about that. Like,
Hmm.
people who want power want to have control over people that feel disempowered.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm
Like,
with you. I'm all for the, like, I think that the best thing you can do is give someone the opportunity or help empower them, like by just giving it to them or whatever. I've never been a big supporter of that.
yeah, and this is why then too, at every stage where there's been a living Buddha, people in power have came to kill them.
Hmm.
They killed Christ. Why? Because he wanted to empower people that weren't in power.
Hmm.
They attempted to kill Buddha several times. Most people don't know that. Gautama Siddhartha, Jesus was a Buddha. Like people view, like we don't know enough about culture in the United States to kind of understand. We're taught religion in a very Western way, and we
Hmm.
have to break free of how we were educated. I didn't know where education started, but from what I understand, I could be totally wrong here, but from the little research that I have on how education has gotten the way that it has was from John D. Rockefeller.
Hmm.
And he was basically wanting workers,
Right.
cogs for the machine.
Right.
not empowered, self-made entrepreneurs, I mean, imagine if like some people like didn't really want to be like an expansive entrepreneur, but they just wanted to like have the ability to work for themselves.
Freedom.
Freedom, you know, and what government that seeks power wants their people to feel free? No, they want you to feel certain sections of this government want you to feel dependent because they can control you through dependency.
Yeah, but again, I think the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah, I think some people are good intended, and I think some people are malintended.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably true. Yeah.
I don't. I've not experienced human beings to just be like innately all the time altruistic beings with everybody's best intentions in mind. I know plenty of people that would literally take everything from you, including your own life, and they wouldn't even feel a sense of remorse or guilt for it.
Yeah, that's so different. And again, it's just so interesting getting a glimpse into your world and how you grew up, right? Because in my world, like I grew up in Canada in a nice small town. Everyone's nice. Everyone's friendly.
Yeah.
So in my world, like
I mean,
it's not often that I've encountered people like that.
some
So
folks that in big business. I mean, come
yeah,
on, like
of
really,
course.
like if you think about it too, like how altruistic really is a Jeff Bezos?
Yeah.
I mean, that dude has got like think about it. Let's just say you built a business to Jeff Bezos level. Think about how much, like, just how many different things could be being done if he had a deeper, more altruistic heart.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one way to look at it. But on the other side, I mean, the way I see it is I don't like that Amazon has a lot of power, but Amazon's cool in the sense that Amazon has enabled a bunch of micro entrepreneurs, right?
Oh yeah. I'm not like, I'm trying to like look at all sides of things with as honest eyes as possible. And like what could be, I'm not saying that like he has an obligation to do anything. I'm just trying to like look at him honestly as a person. And like looking at motives, because what people take action on also reveals their deeper desires and their deeper motives, what they take action on, not what they say they're going to do, but what they actually do.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Is that kind of, like, I don't know if I'm clear there or helping,
No,
I think Amazon is really cool. And I think, and good for him. He's done something like, really, really cool. And I don't know the guy personally, I've seen some I've just gotten to see interviews with him, and and I don't want to speak for a person, or I just like, I've seen great beings do incredible things. Like as an example, my guru, Sadhguru, he's controversial in the US and he's especially controversial in India. But like I have seen this guy plant millions and millions and millions of trees. I've seen him completely like save whole rivers, like major river streams in India, completely revamp across the whole, like major river streams, like huge programs that bring healthcare and food into impoverished rural areas and education systems that their organization that they make money from then uses that money to to fulfill these other more conscious like endeavors. So, and I'm not saying everybody has to do that because we have the right to choose. I guess I'm just kind of saying, wouldn't it be exciting, or wouldn't it be a really like neat place for us to live if rather than just thinking about our own well-being, that universally we really thought about everyone's well-being, like being like super inclusive with our well-being desires.
yeah, no, and I agree with that 100%. I guess if you kind of take a step back though, like everyone kind of has a role to play, right? And I think that always it's better to think of everyone, right? Think about the whole, but it's like, I mean, potentially, let's say the payout for building Amazon is not as great, right? Jeff Bezos doesn't walk away with that, however many billions he walks away with, right? Then maybe he doesn't spend the 25, 30 years slugging away, sweating, like, because no one sees the amount of work that took to bring Amazon to where it is, right? So if the payout's not big enough, maybe he doesn't create that. And then think about all the micro entrepreneurs who are building their livelihoods on Amazon. So, I mean, yeah, do I think that Jeff Bezos should share? Yeah, I think so. I don't know enough about him or about his things, but and of course, like, I think it's always better to be generous and give and not to think of yourself. But I mean, potentially if the payout isn't that big, maybe he doesn't spend the 20 years building it, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah,
So
and I think we're in total alignment. I agree with you 100%. He might not have the desire to push as hard, you know, if that payoff, I mean, because the payoff is significant to him, like in his mind, money is what is significant, you know, or maybe it's not even the money, maybe it's some other thing it's most likely some other thing that he thinks that the money is going to give him, probably. That would push.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know Jeff
Great.
Bezos, but knowing, like, reading a lot, I get about those personality types. I think it's more about, I mean, maybe it is about the money, I don't know, but I think it's more about, like, the creating, right? Building something that's going to change the world, right? And like that part of it's really cool. And so I guess the money is just a side effect. But again, I'm speaking words. I have no idea. I don't know Jeff Bezos, nor have I watched a lot.
Yeah, it'd be sweet. Maybe we both can have it, because, like, I'd like to know. I don't know either. I don't know ultimate, and I'm not trying to put them in a good or a bad box. You know, I was just more or less kind of like presenting the possibility that there was an opportunity that he holds that so many people don't hold,
right,
to where should he choose, should the desire arise within him to execute, and it doesn't have to, it's his life, he can guide it how he wants, of course, you know. And I just think that I'm just pointing out, I guess, that there is an opportunity that could be capitalized on, because he's done so great at positioning himself, you know. And I you know, I guess then maybe too, I operate from the perspective that, like, I like to think that if we are strong and capable, I think that we have some degree of responsibility to help those that are not as strong or not as capable, you know. And you're right, doing that with those micro entrepreneurs and stuff like that. They are doing that. I'm not saying that they're not entire. I don't know enough, you know. I just know that, like, when I think about his net worth, I'm like, oh my God, that is an incredible amount of money.
Yeah.
You know, like, if I compare that to you know, I guess how most people live, and like other expenditures and stuff, like, and I don't know enough. I guess I don't know enough about how, you know, how the flow of money goes in and out, or what that really means for him, you know. It would be neat to see where his heart was, you know, what he was wanting to do.
It would be cool. Maybe we'll get Jeff Bezos on the podcast.
Get him on, and you find out the tough questions that we all want to know. You know?
But
what drives you, Jeff?
I think it, like, in my opinion, I mean, I don't know, right? And I'm 100% with you. I think that if you have that level of wealth, right, like, you should have at least some, whatever, kind of spread the wealth or do something, try to help other people. And I think, I mean, I don't know enough about this situation, but kind of when it comes back down to habits, I think it, like, at the end of the day, you take someone who's living in the middle class here, right, and you compare them to someone who's living in Guatemala, or someone who's living in India in a dire situation. Or do you take the middle class here and you compare it, let's say, to someone who's living in poverty, right, in America? Like, there's always, like, a degree of relative. So it's like if you're in the middle class, right, you have a degree of comfort, why aren't you doing more to help other people, right? Because you could be, right? And it's all relative. Like, so maybe it's not handing out 20 million like Jeff Bezos could do, no problem, but maybe it's handing out $20, right, to the person who doesn't have a meal and is on the street or something. You know what I'm saying? So it's, I feel like as your spending habits, your generosity isn't it's like if people think, oh, once I make X amount of dollars, I can be generous, I can give. It never turns out that way, right? The more you make, the more you want. And in I don't know, I have no idea how those people live, but my assumption is Jeff Bezos isn't friends with a lot of other entrepreneurs. Jeff Bezos isn't friends with a lot of other billionaires, and their world is normal. It's like just like buying a toy for their kid. It's like, let's buy a yacht, let's buy, you know what I'm saying? So it's like that has become normalized in their world. So maybe it's like I don't know, like a detachment from reality. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, nobody owes anybody anything. So Jeff
Mhm.
doesn't owe the world his charity, like it's not an owed thing. And I like what you said. I think it's a really cool if we have a genuine desire to be helpful and to be like conscious with our generosity too,
Mhm.
like I definitely and generosity doesn't always have to come with money. It can come in the form of education. It can come
Mhm.
in the form of listening, and I think so much of generosity comes from the sweetness of emotion that you give.
Yeah.
Are you generous with your love? Are you
Mhm.
generous with your pleasantness? Or are you generous with your bitterness? Are you very generous with your anger?
Yeah.
Generous with your depression? I guess what I'm hoping is what no matter a person's money, because life itself doesn't care about our bank ledger.
Mhm.
I think I get on the subject of money because of money as a tool. It's a nice tool.
Uh-huh. It gives you, yeah, it gives you freedom. It gives you leverage. That's what money gives you.
Yeah,
It gives you a lot of leverage.
but it doesn't give you much. It really doesn't. Even if you've got tons of money, you can be like exceptionally monetarily wealthy and just like excruciatingly poor in every other thing. You can be
Mhm.
poor in deep, meaningful relationships. You can be in um, poor in truth, poor in understanding of like the deeper components about life.
Which is why I think actually money is tougher, right? Because if you have a lot of money, you're always wondering, like, is this person actually my friend because they want to be my friend, or are they my friend because of the connections they can get or because of what I can give them? Same thing with truth, right? If you have money, you have so much leverage. So then it's like no one really wants to tell you the truth because like they want to impress you. It's just like this power dynamic or hierarchy, right? That kind of leaves people wondering like what are the true motives, you know? So I think
Yeah,
it's almost
I
tougher.
feel
Hmm.
because I actually think that one of the things why like a lot of my clients and students end up loving and staying with me for such a long time is that they feel very quickly I don't give a fuck about their, like I don't care at all. I don't care how much money that they have, and they're not used to being experienced as like a real human.
Hmm.
Like I'm not there because of their money. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And so like because of that, it takes a second. Like they have to like be with me a second and do their little like, their little social testing. They're going to test me.
Yeah.
They're going to test me to see if I'm there for the money or if I'm there, to like actually provide them like with the tactics and techniques to give them what they're at. They haven't figured out how to get it yet,
Hmm.
you know, and they don't know who to trust because again, most of the people are not with them to be with them in a genuine encounter.
Yeah.
A lot of people have a secondary motive. So I'm very upfront about the motives in the beginning. I'm like, hey, these are my rates, boom,
Hmm.
right? Aside from my rate, like and I'll even tell them, I'm like, hey, and listen, like the only reason why I even want money for this is because I got to pay some bills, and and I get it. I know you're a business person, right? So being totally like upfront about the money component, but I'll say I would do this for free.
Question for you. Do you secretly despise wealth?
Do I secretly despise wealth?
Hmm.
Well, I'm perpetually working upon like overcoming a long-standing deep inner tendency, or like where you're sort of taught in poverty that rich people are mean and awful. you know? And so like, it's not even like a despising of wealth. Like there's some layers to it. Like I think one layer is like, uh, there was a long-standing belief that for a long time that wealth was going to be hard to have.
Hmm. Like it was unattainable. You couldn't attain
it. That it was unattainable, you know. So that neural network still exists as a pathway in my brain. So then I have to be very conscious of how those neural networks are playing out, which is why then again, like my yoga is so important and so valuable, because when you do your process, it will kick you loose from your body and it will kick you loose from your mind. So like you'll actually get to view your mind like a spectator.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the power in that is it gives me the ability to watch my inner tendencies, in real time. And then I can start to like, I'm always questioning them in general, you know, but then I can start to like work with them, you know, like change them, you know, by taking conscious action to change them.
How did you first get into meditating, first get into yoga?
I got into meditating and yoga. I had first gotten into fitness because I'd always felt an intuitive connection between using my body and creating pleasantness. Like ever since I was a kid, I had this, like, I'm like, oh, if I go do this with my body, like I'm going to feel better. Like if I go play in the playground, or, you know, I do something like that. And then in the Marines, you know, like I definitely experienced a lot of ability to create pleasantness for myself through hard training of my body and through the active displaying discipline in my world, like being like squared away, locked in, you know. So I needed to regain some discipline, because like the more we do what we want, then it's often really easy to become undisciplined. Like, oh, I want the pizza, so I eat the pizza. Oh, I want the beer, so I drink the beer. Oh, I want to, you know, go to the cute girl's house, so I go to the cute girl's house. Oh, I want to, you know, the more we, you know, we kind of give into that, it's really easy to slip into like a little less disciplined state and a little less disciplined state. And so I needed to like recover this feeling that like I was actually in control of my life, because the way I was experiencing my life was that I wasn't in control of anything, and I couldn't make anything of any real substance happen, and I couldn't gain any traction, and I couldn't hit any targets, right? Like I was in this time period in my life where that's what I was experiencing. So I started with one of the most basic things that I can control, which was what I put into my body and what came out of my mouth.
Interesting.
You know, so I started controlling my food, and I really started to just shut the fuck up. You know, I wanted to, and even now, like I really see that as being a very still continual, valuable, exceptionally valuable process that stays with me all the time. I'm talking a lot in the podcast because we're here, and
I asked you to talk. I want to hear about your experience. I like hearing what you have to say.
But ideally, like when I'm not in a position where I'm being asked to talk, I won't talk. You know, and I stay quiet a lot. You know, I stay quiet and I want to listen. But then, you know, I'll talk, but I needed to gain some control, because in the past, like things would just fly out of my mouth, you know, and like saying things can get you in more trouble than doing things sometimes.
Okay, so you started going to the gym to start regaining the discipline.
The discipline. I needed to get healthy. I needed to get healthy, and so I started controlling my food, built a disciplined macro plan for myself again. I wanted to, and at the time, like again, mind you, I don't know anything that I know about yoga now. So like I wanted to be sexy. Like I wanted to look good. Totally. Like I thought that one of the few things at the time, this was what I thought. I was like, well, okay, I don't have like a fancy car. Okay. Like I don't have a nice car. I don't really have very many like nice clothes. I don't have like consistent living for myself. Um, I don't have like, you don't get to come home to like Christmases with me. You don't get family dinners with me. Like you don't get shit with me really besides me. Right. And I just, at the time, I did not have enough like inner knowing of my inner value that especially with women, like I feel like my experience now of women is women really have a real genuine desire to connect with their partners on a real deep emotional level and psychological level. And that's a huge driver even for the physical component of the interaction, is that like their ability to actually like connect with you on a deeper level. It's also really beneficial though, I feel, if you can still hit those survival based attraction circuits.
Depending, right? Depending. I think from the female, at least, I don't know how other girls are, but for me, it's always like the most attractive thing is when someone's super comfortable with who they are, I guess self-actualized, like someone who's like just completely comfortable with the person they are. It's like a confidence but not an arrogance, and it's like when you have that, you know your worth. It's like you know your worth, and if you know your worth, then like I can see your worth. So.
Yeah, and what you just described there was a little bit more like eloquently of what I was attempting to say. Like I didn't realize that about women at the time.
Interesting.
Well, one thing is like no human being will ever be 100% how you want them to be. So when learning how to love, I think people need to know that. I think they need to realize that love is a sweetness of human emotion that doesn't need restriction, and only what we give becomes our fragrance.
Interesting.
Like a flower has a fragrance.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%.
Like if I give bitterness, I'm giving the fragrance of bitterness. If I give anger, I give that too, and
I think Bill Gates, I don't know, one person had a really good quote. No, I don't know, so maybe Charlie Munger, but it's like, if you want a worthy partner, be worthy of a worthy partner. And then
yes, totally. It's an exceptionally accurate quote. And one of the interesting things, I bring this up because like the internet has been like a parent for me. Like so much of how I've been able to develop myself has come by listening to people that I would have never had access to if it wasn't for the internet. And like allowing them to be a brother that I had never met, a sister that I had never met, a father that I'd never experienced, a mother that I'd never experienced, a lover that I'd never experienced, like just allowing myself to have all of these like sort of different experiences from my present vantage point and like listening to them. But then I also recognize though that like in relationship, because relationship it's a variable. Like it's never fixed. It's never static. It's always dynamic. And so like I was thinking, I had this hit me, I don't remember when, but it hit me again recently that like you might not be the kind of person that would earn the right to be friends with that person in real life.
Interesting.
Like let's take Joe Rogan as an example. I was thinking you know how many people, including myself, because I started listening to Joe from his very first podcast.
No way.
Podcast episode 1 with Brian Redband.
Where they freaking were trying to figure out the camera.
Yeah.
How does this work?
And I watched them go through like the early days where the podcast sponsor was the fleshlight. Joe used to like sell the sex toy. I think Aubrey Marcus's mom made it. It's the only like, it's like the number one sex toy for men, the fleshlight, right? It's
I can't say I watched that earlier, but it sounds like something Joe would advertise earlier.
Yep. So, and he used to give away on the podcast. People would show up and he'd be like, dude, he's like way better than your hand. Take this thing,
Oh yeah.
So
like Joe too.
you know, and he was one of the first people having like real honest conversations
Yeah.
that were real. But Joe's also like done a lot of jujitsu, and he's done a lot of personal development. So he's this really great combination of being both like understanding and dangerous.
Yeah, I like Joe a lot. Just, I mean, yeah, because he's pretty open-minded. That I like that, and I like you were saying with the jujitsu, or I don't know where he picked it up, but I like the mentality is a very empowering mindset. It's never like a victim mindset. It's always, and it is very authentic. Like Joe just doesn't give two shits. It's just literally like he started this thing to have conversations with his buddies, you know?
Yeah.
So I love that. I really, really appreciate that about Joe. I don't like sometimes I think now he's gotten better, but sometimes he'd make some comments. I was like, like you gotta say that. But I mean, I like it though, because he's just authentically who he is. So
See, that's really cool too, to even hear you, like, because I love, like, there's such a beauty in like loving the total person and being able to like, at times like not always agree with everything like a person says, but not go, oh, I can't fucking be your friend anymore because you said one thing I didn't like.
Yeah,
or
which has been like this year in politics is crazy. Like if you say that, oh, I like this about the Republicans, or I like this about the Democrats, it's like you're automatically put in a box. So you're automatically put like polarized. And it's crazy how much people, that's how much emotions is behind it. Like it's like, I mean, yeah, I agree with some of these things. Yeah, I like some of the things, like, but I'm not in one camp or the other.
You're so rooted in your own identity that like doesn't, you just don't feel, you can't, it's hard to feel other people. But you're right, we're in this polarized.
But I think it comes back down to your practice, right? It's like if your ego or you attach yourself to a certain identity, you can't let go of that identity. So therefore you'll defend that identity no matter what, right? If I'm a Republican, I'm going to defend that. If I'm a Democrat, I'm going to defend that regardless of, so it's everyone could meditate a little bit more, do some more yoga, like detach from their ego. I don't think we'd be facing what we're facing,
Yeah, you're totally right. I think that like I experience it like this too. Like even if like I'm in conversation, like I don't know everybody's experiences. So like you're in a conversation and like you're talking about subjects and something doesn't immediately align with your present experience of that thing or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's really quick for people to want to convince the other party that their perspective is the right one.
Yeah. There's not a lot of empathy. Like no one really seeks to understand. It's just like, this is my opinion and my opinion is right because this is how I've experienced the world. Right. And who's to tell you, who are you to tell me that my experience is wrong? But on the flip side, it's like, who are you to tell me that my experience is wrong? And I feel like that's part of the issue is like, no one tries to understand the other person. No one has empathy, which is actually another reason why I like doing this podcast, is because it's like, if you can understand people, understand their experiences, and if you can get a glimpse into what their world looks like, I mean, then you can understand their behavior, then you can understand their point of view. Still doesn't mean you have to agree with them, like, but at least you understand where their behavior is coming from, and then it removes good or bad, or removes like this person is bad, or their behavior pisses me off. You understand it, so it like takes away the emotion of it, and then it's just like, okay, I don't agree with you, that's fine, you can think that, or whatever, I don't agree with you, but it's not so much me versus you, it's just like, I understand, let's move forward.
Yeah, and then you can still be pleasant with people, and then you can handle situations and circumstances with greater clarity and greater effectiveness, right? Like I can be more clear, I can be more effective when I'm pleasant, and then I can choose my responses better too. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well,
I don't know, like have you ever seen, like I've seen some videos of like places in like, Thailand or whatever, guys got like a machete to somebody's throat, something. And you have an officer that's like talking to this person. And if even in that moment, they can find a way to seek to understand what brought that person to the point where they could put a machete
Yeah.
to his throat, and they start talking to that part of that person that doesn't feel seen, that doesn't feel understood.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? And that police officer can do that. You can almost inevitably see that person walking themselves away from the ledge. And and it's in those spaces when that person's consciousness steps back from the ledge that usually then the officer kind of like rushes in and makes the save, before that person gets hurt or injured, or maybe they walk them away. We see that with like suicide jumpers, people that are sitting on edges of bridges, and somebody can talk, because they're empathizing, because they're seeking to understand, because they're not going to sit on that, because like you could imagine, like now if we had a suicide jumper and this poor person is about to get the worst deputy ever to come and help him, right? Because the guy's going to go to jump and they're having a conversation. The officer's like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, oh, I'm just having a rough day. And he's like, well, you're fucking stupid. You shouldn't even be having a rough day because look, the sun's out. You know what I'm saying? Like how, like, and he's just, he's like putting how he thinks life should be off onto that person. Then that person, their inner tendency is going to be like, well, fuck you. This, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're going to want to do what they want to do more to prove him wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if that officer can talk to the part of them that doesn't feel understood, maybe that part of them doesn't even feel understood to themselves. If there's a way in which we can see each other to that depth, and I know we can train that ability, but it does take courage, and you have to risk being, there's a lot there.
Well, and you have to break your silos, right? You can't be in the same groups of people. You can, I mean, maybe you can, but you have to actively seek out and really seek out, right? Not seek out just to argue, right? But really seek out the different opinion, to understand it. I had a friend once, he told me, super, super impactful for me. He said, if I feel myself judging someone else, I look for the gaps of ignorance in my own understanding.
Yeah.
So after he told me that, I was like, wow, you're so right. And then it's like, now it's been so helpful for my life, because if I'm ever like judging something, then I try to figure out like what about them I don't understand. And it makes me a happier person, because it's like, this person was a dick or whatever it was. And it's like, all right, well, I mean, let me understand how their life is going. Right. And then if you understand that, then you realize it's never about you, right? It's always about that person, how they're experiencing and how they're feeling, so it's been super, super helpful. And it's just ridiculous. I think empathy is one of the most underrated, but one of the most powerful skills to have. And I just think that not a lot of people access the power of empathy.
You're totally right. You're totally right. And like, I loved what you said. You said, it's not about me, it's about them and their internal experience, which goes back to what we've been saying this whole time, that we can choose the theme of my kind of main message, I guess you could say, is that we can choose our internal experience regardless of situation. It takes training, because like when a human being is pleasant and joyful, there's not a desire to do harm.
Yeah, exactly.
There's desire to do harm when you're in an unpleasant or miserable state.
Yeah, there's a tweet there's something like, no one looks at an old man or like at a guy screaming at an old lady in traffic and thinks, man, I want this guy's life. Like, no one thinks that, know that people are struggling with their own kind of shitholes or whatever it is.
And those people, so then like my message to those folks, to the guy screaming, my message to the guy screaming at the old lady would be, hey man, she's not who you're really pissed at. And there's something in that person that they've yet to want to confront and they've yet to want to look at.
Well, every human being really is mostly experiencing their lives as a gigantic bundle of psychological drama,
Hmm.
which is driven by the memories of their past experiences and the imaginations of their future experiences. And most of these decisions or behaviors are not happening as a conscious choice. Like, people are being pushed by their thought, they're being pushed by their emotion to respond, or most likely to react in a very, let's maybe use the word, compulsive fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And then the present mental condition around this is that we are free. We are free because we can do what you feel like doing.
So what you're saying is everyone is acting kind of out of, a lot of people are acting out of like compulsion because they don't really understand, or they haven't worked through, they don't know the compulsions or the things that they're getting, but we think we're free.
Yeah, like we've this has been my experience. Like, we think that
Mm-hmm.
we're free
Mm-hmm.
because we want to follow it. Like, a lot of folks, and I won't say every folks, but like, this is
Mm-hmm.
why we want to follow these little signals that you're getting from the inside. Somebody feels a little bit of anger, right? And they feel now all of a sudden that their reaction is justified, their behavior is justified, because they have this feeling of anger that's rising within them. So then it's not they're not looking at the situation and going, okay, how do I consciously handle this situation? They're looking at, they're reacting.
Got it. Got it. It's
you
like
know
it's like their emotions is painting a narrative, and that narrative is like painting the world from their opinion or from their viewpoint.
yes. And so, part of what I have discovered is the link between all layers of our system. Like, in American culture, particularly Western culture, we don't have a holistic or a realistic view or understanding as to how our system actually works. Like, right now, most people believe themselves to be a body, or most people believe themselves to be a mind. Like, we're very, very belief driven.
Hmm. Go deeper into that. I think I know a little bit about what you're talking about, but I can't say that I mean, this is why I also want to talk to you to learn more about it. But in terms of, observing the mind instead of being in the mind or thinking you are the mind, but kind of unpack that a little bit more.
Well, so what people call as their body is, if we look at it, what we discover is that the body is just a piece of the planet that we're carrying around on loan.
Interesting. That totally different, like totally changes, I guess, the way that you would view things, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, so like right now in American culture, we've not really been encouraged to turn inward. We've not been encouraged to ask questions. We're much more encouraged to just have faith, to believe, right? And then, not, consciously or unconsciously, then people are facing the everyday struggles of life, and they're responding to the best of their ability, their present ability, to those struggles, right? And belief offers a really nice momentary sense of like solace, like comfort, but the thing is if you ever see people that die, like I've been very blessed to have a very deep and varied experience of life, and I've been very fortunate to have been with several folks at end of life, and I've also been very fascinated with the life process ever since I was a child, and so this has really been a lifelong pursuit for me. And one of the things that you notice is that like most people typically die just freaky shit scared, horrified. They die horrified. Like, they're in complete and total terror in the last moments of their life. And when I really sat with this for a while and I was thinking, I was perceiving, just looking, um, it came to me fundamentally that these people never in their life really contemplated the fact that they were actually going to die.
They never face their mortality, as you were saying
They never,
before.
yes, they never faced their mortality. And since in some way, someplace within them, there was an illusionary perception that death happened to other people, but it didn't happen to me.
Interesting. Interesting.
Then
And so
go ahead.
facing your mortality would be breaking that illusion, or what do you mean by facing your mortality?
Yeah, facing, if you genuinely face your mortality, whatever illusions that you have built up for yourself, they all come crashing down the moment that death approaches you. You know, especially belief structures. You know, like if people were so confident in their beliefs of their gods or whatever, then everybody would be jumping off cliffs and bridges. You
Right.
know, but
That's
nobody's
a way to look
jumping,
at it. It's true.
but nobody's jumping off cliffs and bridges because in their heart of hearts, somewhere in them, they know they do not know.
Hmm. Interesting. And you would argue
And
it's because they've never taken the time to look inward and to question, but they just hold these false beliefs, or not false beliefs, but they just hold these beliefs without really questioning them.
yeah, that would be that's been my experience of human beings, that
Hmm.
they're just not questioning what they've downloaded. And I think it's really neat when you look at human babies, this idea of a human being, I said at the beginning, with memory, like we're just a bundle of memory. So we have evolutionary memory, which lets you and I know that we're a human being. Like I'm not a snake,
Right, right.
you
Okay.
know, and I'm not a horse, I'm not a tiger, I'm a
Hmm.
human being. You know, then we have genetic memory. That genetic memory says that I come from a German Irish descent, I believe. I don't know. I need to take, if I really want to know, I need to do a DNA test. But you know, at least according to rumors that I've heard floating around, I think I may be of German Irish descent, as to where somebody else might be of, like, you know, African descent, like African, like Nigerian, you know, or Cameroonian, or somebody
Hmm.
might be of like Latin American descent, or, you know, so then they have their genetic memory. As an example of this too, like you don't remember your great 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 grandmother, do you?
Mm-mm.
But her nose is on your face.
I see. Right.
You know, so this memory is playing out in your system, and nature has certain, we might think of them as like indwelling software, like a type of pre-programmed software that's scheduled to go off like a timed released bomb.
Mm.
You know, so, and this is part of that memory system, and then as that memory system kind of kicks in, we start getting like new thoughts and new ideas. Like I always love the example of puberty. Like I like before puberty, boobs and butts had zero interest to me,
Mhm.
you know.
And post puberty, it's a whole new world. She said, "Oh my gosh, what is this world we're living in?"
Post puberty, I was like, wait, what? Like
What?
who wants these little race car toys over here? You know, I've tried, there's something way more exciting out here, you
Oh
know.
man, to get into the mind of a
So
boy. Mm.
oh yeah, yeah. And especially like once testosterone really starts to kick into your system, and you see it in every just speaking directly about the pubescent boy experience, you know, like you really do see it in young men. They start to
Mhm.
become a completely different being once the hormone chemical of testosterone is introduced into the system. Now, the thing is like, well, why wasn't that chemical just dumping into the body in a big way prior to this? Well, because there's some type of timed released memory
Hmm.
that is set to go off once a human being, you know, kind of reaches a certain stage, you know, that, you know, we call that memory our genetics, you know, and there are whole fields of study that are studying genetics. And then in science, in Western science now, we call this epigenetics or
Hmm.
above genetics, like this whole field of study that is how we can actually turn on and turn off specific gene expressions based upon how we're thinking and feeling, based upon the environmental conditions that we're exposed to, which it makes complete sense if you just view that over nature itself and consider how like a person could go from being, say, an overweight person to a fit person.
What's your opinion on the nature versus nurture discussion? Like, do you think people are, like, I guess, yeah, to decipher if you think people are the way they are because that's their genetics, or it's more so the factors in nature that determine?
I really do think it's a combination of both.
Okay.
Right. And then it's not, and then there's an element of personal responsibility that I think should be added in there.
So you, depending on your nature or your whatever, depending on what you were born with, you have the ability to change with the decisions that you make.
Yes, I think human beings 100% are gifted with the ability to choose their experience, not necessarily their situation.
You want to go a little, sorry, you want to go dive a little deeper into that?
Yeah, well, so what happens within me is 100% my making. This is a deep and very difficult truth for many people to make peace with.
What happens within me is 100% my making.
Yes.
So
what ends up happening is your whole language framing has to collapse, right? Like now no longer can it be, well, hey, you're making me angry.
I see.
This is a false statement. That is a complete false statement. Nobody is making you anything. You are making yourself. I'm not discarding unpleasant situations. That's why I said experience.
But you can choose. There's a quote that I like, is like, the world is only our perception of the world. So I feel like it kind of relates here, is like, you choose how you react to a situation, or you choose how you feel about that situation.
Well, you can choose so the way when you said that, you can choose how you feel about a situation. And when you said that, it means that you have a specific set of memory and prejudices from which you're viewing the situation from.
I see. So you're going even deeper, is like you want to unpack the memory and prejudice.
Well, I think, from my experience, you're not going to be able to completely disregard your memories and your prejudices, right? But there is an element where you don't have to be pushed and pulled by them, you don't have to be pushed and pulled by the memories of your past or your personal likes and dislikes. In fact, like the more that you're not pushed by them, then the more free you are, and then the more your internal world becomes under your own control.
Interesting. And how would one go about controlling that? Because I mean, if you have a past bad experience, it's hard to just forget it, or it's hard to deal with it, or what would you suggest?
Yeah, well, you definitely don't want to forget it. Like in the same context, I don't want to forget that if I put my finger in a light socket, I get electrocuted. Like, I don't want to forget that, because I don't want to walk back into the same problems. I want to remember every damned betrayal, every tragedy, every heartbreak, every curse, everything, every boon. I want to remember it all vividly. And then to the best of my ability, I want to unpack all of the experiences of my life in such a way that I'm mining them for data. I'm mining them for wisdom.
Interesting.
Rather than looking at like stoicism to learn about life, I want to look at life to learn about life.
I see. Learn from your own experiences.
And I'll use stoicism or mysticism as like guide points. I'm like, okay, well, let me see. But then you have to remember that person is framing, they're using language in an attempt to convey something that can't be conveyed through language.
I'm not sure I fully understand that.
Well, so do you speak any other languages?
I'm getting almost fluent in Spanish. We're close. Conversational.
But Spanish isn't your native language,
No,
right?
no.
So you have to learn how to associate new sounds in your head and give them new meanings. Like you're going through this process of associating new sounds with new objects. So you're overlaying a sound to an object. And then somewhere in your own mind, we make up the meanings about what those sounds mean, which is why, like, we see street language.
I see.
Same sounds, completely different meanings. But who's making up the meanings? Me or you?
Well, together, right? I guess that would be my first reaction, is together, because that's how we communicate.
Yeah, but the ultimate onus of the meaning is always on the individual on the inside. I can't dictate what meaning you choose to put on to something.
Got it. So it's
like what like you could want it to mean something differently than what I want it to mean.
Understood.
So language has this like limitation to it, verbal language. So when I'm reading or learning, I'm always trying to utilize words, or let's say practices or techniques. I think of them as like arrows pointing to something.
Interesting.
I'm always trying to discover the thing that they're pointing to. Like, what were they pointing to? And why were they pointing to it?
Got it. So you're never taking anything as an absolute truth. You're kind of looking at it, you're saying, oh, here are the hints. I don't know, let's try to figure out what they're saying and how does this relate to my experiences?
Well, would you say that absolute, like any form of absolute truth, can it be found in anything that has the capability of changing?
No. I would say no.
No. So if you have a desire for absolute truth, you have to search for the changeless.
And what is the changeless?
That's what everybody has to go searching for. Right?
Do you think that you have found something that's changeless?
I would say that I've been very blessed now to have had certain experiences that give me that gave me the experience of something beyond physical nature. Everything that is physical is always changing.
Even, do you know who Paramahansa Yogananda is?
No. Negative.
Paramahansa Yogananda was like, he's a famous yoga person, like in the yoga community. He wrote an incredibly influential book called The Autobiography of a Yogi. In fact, they handed the book out at Steve Jobs' funeral. It was one of like, it's a really powerful book. It's a great book. It's one of the things that really like was like a pivotal book in influencing me into going deeper into yogic tradition and yogic process. And in the book, though, like he'd been seeking God since he was a boy, like little boy. Like it was his only life's passion, according to the Autobiography of a Yogi, was to be a self-realized yogic master. And he meets his guru in his younger years, and then this guru Sri Yukteswar sends him to the United States to spread the wisdom of yoga. And his first little bit of time here in the US, he's kind of welcomed pretty well. Like he's speaking for major political figures and in big events and stuff, and he makes his way to Encinitas, California. His ashram is still there. You can go to it. It's really cool. I've been there. You should go. Really But at some point in time, though, the narrative flipped, and all of a sudden there were like major attacks on Yogananda. Him being brown, teaching this like meditation, devil worship stuff. This is what newspapers were printing about him. There was accusations that other monks were like having sex with white women, which was like, God forbid, somebody, like at a time period, a little bit, it was a different time period culturally in the United States where, cultures had a harder time integrating with one another.
Mhm.
And the media at that time, the newspapers, they did not, they were not very supportive then of Yogananda. And he felt tremendous despair over this. And he couldn't understand for a little bit why he calls it the Divine Mother, the of creation. He said he couldn't understand why the Divine Mother, was keeping him in this place, this, as he would call it, godless place, where like they had no, connection to spirituality or going within. Like in India, it's much more, it's not like as exceptionally popular as we think it is in the West. Like, because I actually have this like really interesting thing that happens where a lot of young Indian men and women will find me. Then they'll start studying with me, and then invariably they get reinvigorated about their own culture again. But at the time when they start studying with me, like they're not interested at all in their own culture. They're much more interested in American culture.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, but like, so I feel as though this process of overcoming our inner limitations, like it just keeps going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like a continual journey of
on a deeper level. And as you, like, Yogananda had to make peace with being hated. And still be loved. You know who else had to do this? Jesus. Jesus had to make peace with being hated and still be loving. Buddha had to make peace with being hated and still be loving. All of the great saints eventually have to make peace experientially, which means you're most likely, like, there's a great story of Buddha getting spit on in the face. And one of like Buddha's like major disciples was like, dude, you want me to take this dude's head off? Because I will take this dude's head off right now. And Buddha just wiped the spit off of his face and he was like, thank you. And the guy was like, what? And he's like, you gave me an opportunity to check myself to see if I was still capable of anger or
not. Wow. That's powerful.
Yeah. Keep in mind, the Buddha lived like he was a prince, and his dad, because of like, a little astrological reading, his dad was worried that Buddha, his name was Gautama Siddhartha. He was worried that he wouldn't want to be a king because there was this little astrological prediction that he was either going to be a great ruler or a sage. And his dad wanted him to be a great ruler. So his dad showered him with riches and women and everything that, that he could have ever wanted. And then he had a series of experiences that shattered the illusionary world that he was living in. And then he went seeking truth. And then he began yogic practices very intensely. And within a few year period, he had mastered, certain like really intense yogic processes, but he had not fully realized the ultimate truth, the ultimate space, real, genuine, what the yogis would call mukti, or liberation, which is not just like freedom from suffering. It's something much deeper. Freedom from all bondages is what mukti means.
Interesting.
And so freedom from all bondages. And so he was doing a type of practice at the time where they walk naked. So they're naked and they walk, and they'll only eat food that's offered to them. It's a type of wandering yogi called the samana. And he became very emaciated and sickly. And he said, all this practice, all this sadhana, all this torture I'm putting myself through, if what I'm seeking is within me, it should be available to me now. He had this experience crossing a river. And then he mustered up enough energy to get across the river. And he sat down under a tree with a certain resolve within him. He said, I will I will sit here and become enlightened, or I will die under this tree.
Hmm.
So the longing for the ultimate became more significant to him than his own life.
Wow. Interesting.
And this is actually like for most of the people who watch this or are going to be interested in yoga and meditation, step one is make yourself pleasant. Get healthy. Get the body healthy. Get the brain healthy. Develop the ability to take care of your physical health and your internal well-being. Because until such time that you can't, what longing for breaking bondages can a person have until they're an exuberant, blissful being?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're suffering, when you're suffering, you'll just long to be free from the suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we're suffering, we just want to not suffer anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
So it's only when we become like really, really exceptionally exuberant and exceptionally pleasant that a longing for something else arises in the system. The
Mm-hmm.
longing for the ultimate arises in the system.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're blissful, will you do more things or less?
More.
Yeah.
Maybe less. I don't know. Depends. Depends on what your blissful state is.
Most people, if they're blissful, they're going to do more things. They're going to take, because it's the fear of suffering that back.
Right, right. I think if I'm blissful, I do less. I get very like, I get very like, oh, I need to do this, blah, blah, blah. But if I'm like calm and collected, then I'm like okay with like relaxing and just like enjoying the moment. If not, I'm always like, I need to do something. I need to climb. I need to work. I need to.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true too. But I guess like maybe a better statement would be: would you give yourself a more variety life experience if you could be perpetually blissful?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because like you
Correct.
ton of big activity and not be doing much at all.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So maybe that would be a better way of like kind of framing the language around it. Like you'd give yourself, you know, like if you're really blissful, maybe, you know, you go see different places
Mm-hmm.
and you like really see them, be present to them, take them in, to have the experience of that place or that person or that food or that song,
Mm-hmm.
versus that thing being a mechanism to escape your suffering.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because like when
Right.
as a mechanism to escape suffering, we still don't even get to experience the thing as it truly is, because in some ways we're using it to distract ourselves from a nagging suffering that is still there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like where is this? What intention is this coming out of? Like fear or joy or whatever it is. But what's the intention of what you're doing?
Yeah, and you know, that's why I think it's so important to be honest with ourselves, to ourselves, because you can bullshit the world, but you can't bullshit yourself. Ultimately, you know where you really are within yourself.
Yeah. True. With that, I actually have to run. What I was thinking is like while you're telling your story is I think that you have such a freaking superpower and unique opportunity, right? Because you've experienced a lot of things that you've had, right? Like even, and I know you want to impact kind of the people in the hood or under in the poverty, right? Like, I mean, what if you would create like a YouTube channel or a content thing that has stuff that, because like other people who haven't gone through the same experiences have no idea what it's like, right? So like you have a unique ability to be able to relate to these people, right? And I mean, if you make a YouTube channel, you get subscribers, like there's ways to monetize, right? There's a lot of ways once you build up an audience and brand. So I just think for you, I think it's a huge opportunity, and it's an opportunity and like it's a mission that is sounds like you want to do, and I think is super, super admirable, you know.
Thank you. I'm gonna like totally execute on that. I think like if ever there's been a message from the universe for the last like few years for me, it's been make a YouTube channel. Like, I can't tell you how many people tell me to make a YouTube channel, and I have one, and I've posted like a few little things,
Uh-huh.
but I haven't dedicated as much energy to it. So, I'm going to do that. I'm going to dedicate more energy to it.
Well, look,
All
that's
right.
something I want to learn about a little bit more too. So, I mean, we should, catch
Let's
up,
do
share
it.
resources because I think that's something I'm kind of looking into too. So,
I would love to. And I
cool.
love talking to you. So hit me up anytime that you want. Okay, Katie?
Sounds good, Matthew. Pleasure. It's
All right.
awesome. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye, sweetie. See ya.
Nice meeting you.
Bye.
Bye.